Hi and welcome back to another video. If you intend to put up a fence wall just as I have behind me here, ideally there are a couple of materials that you need. So you need materials such as sand, you also will need some chippings, you need cement, you need the blocks itself, you need wood, and then maybe steel as well as water. Now this is for starters. Now if you want to go a little bit beyond that, you will then want to introduce damp-proof membrane or DPM within your trenches. Also have some bitumen to paint the bottom parts of your trenches, and then also have DPC, that is a damp proof course, just as we have here, also to minimize or even prevent damp from occurring on the walls. These are some of the materials that ideally you will need for your fence wall. So the sand, the chippings, the cement and water coming together to give you your concrete, which you are basically going to use as your blinding concrete, and then also the sand, the cement and water helping you make your mortar, which you are going to basically use in the laying of the blocks. And if you are using bitumen, DPC and DPM, then that is helping you minimize or prevent damp. What if I tell you that there are instances or situations where you can eliminate some of these materials to help you minimize or reduce cost in the making of your fence wall? Yes, it's actually possible to eliminate or remove or avoid some of the materials. Now, what are some of these materials you can actually do your fence wall without? One of them will be wood. Yes, the wall board that usually we use in the making or the formation of the or doing the form works for the columns, and then we eventually go out to cast the concrete. So if you are eliminating the boards, that is helping you reduce some cost. So if you need about 20 pieces of wire board and each is costing you, let's say, about 100 cedis, 20 times 100 is like about 2,000 cedis or so. And then aside that, you have to also purchase nails. So nail box is probably about 90 cedis or 85 or even 100 cedis, and you need a couple of quantities for that. And then you also will need a carpenter. Now, if you are buying minimal or minimum quantity of wire board, then that would mean that the carpenter is going to have to come a couple of times. So use it maybe at a point. Once that is cast, he takes them off and then forms them at a different place. Now, you are paying for the boards, you are paying for the nails, you are even paying for transportation, and then you are also paying a carpenter who's going to do those work. And that is not cheap at all. So if it's possible to eliminate wood, I'm sure it's going to save you some cost. Now, in the process of you eliminating wood, what are you going to be using in place of the wood? That is where you're able to have block columns. So if you look at this fence, for instance, the columns are being formed with blocks. Now, with regard to the blocks, there are three ways going about it. There's the aspect where the blocks only are used to form the columns. I've seen that a couple of times. And even with that, there are certain scenarios or situations that would permit or would be advisable to go with this option. And one of them will have to do with the topography of the land. Is it a leveled land? Is it a land that has got some slope on it? Is it also a land that the slope is mild or is even steep slope? So these are some of the things that will influence whether you have to go with a block column or use the wood in forming your concrete columns. Now, if you're using the block column, as I said, there are three ways to it. There's one where you're using just the blocks, as you can see here. And then there's the aspect where you're using the blocks, but you create a hollow space in it, which will allow you to pour concrete in it to hold the blocks together. There's that aspect. And then also, there's the aspect where you can even put steel. So you have your steel, which is erected within when the blinding concrete is being done. And then that will come exactly in the block columns. And then you pour your concrete. So then you have your blocks, you have your concrete, and you have your steel, which is holding the whole fence together. You have that option. I hope you get it. So what we have over here, because the land is a bit on a slope, we decided to introduce steel at certain intervals. I'll take you around and I'll show you that. So the wood is one of the materials you can actually eliminate or avoid in case you're having a fence wall done, which will help you minimize the cost. One of the materials also you can also eliminate will have to do with steel. If it's on a leveled ground, you can choose to just have your normal block columns, which I see a lot of people do without any concrete in it, but I would rather advise to have the columns, the block columns, which has hollow space in it, that you can pour some concrete. At least the concrete, if it is rich in terms of the aggregate, it is going to be able to bind the whole fence together as against just the normal block columns. The reason why I usually would advise against just the block columns is that the occurrences of cracks are high or higher in such instances if you use just the block columns. But if you have a block column which has a hollow space in it, that has the concrete being poured in it, at least you have a concrete that is binding them together. Then you can even decide to go a step further to even introduce the steel, even if it's on a level ground. It doesn't hurt to add these properties to be able to minimize occurrences of cracks, among others, with regard to the fence wall. So wood is one of the things you can eliminate, and steel is one material so you can eliminate, just in case you have a leveled land which you think it's going to be fine without steel. You can go ahead to do that. But some people, even having a sloped land, sometimes even do without the steel. So that is equally fine. So far as it serves your purpose or it serves what you want to achieve, that is okay. So I wanted to enlighten you on some of these things. So just in case you want to have a fence wall done, then you can save some amount of money, especially purchasing these materials. Now also, notwithstanding, if you are going to be going with block columns, that will mean that you need more blocks. Yes, because the columns, you need some blocks to form the columns. So if you're going to use just about 1,000 pieces of blocks for just the walls, now adding the columns to it, so you probably may add about 200 pieces or maybe about 300 pieces of blocks to that. Now comparing the cost of the blocks against that of the wood, of course the wood is going to be more expensive, because then you're buying the material that is the wood, you're buying nails itself, you're transporting the wood itself, you're paying a carpenter who is also equally going to come and then nail the wood to the walls and then also remove it and then take them to different sections. That is if you are not buying all the wood at once. And in the case where maybe you've already put up your building and you may not be having any use for the wood, then it becomes waste of money, because after the single use you then don't have any other purpose or something you can use the wood for. So this is something you can do in case you are having your fence wall done. Now let me just take this and then show you around. So this is what I was talking about. This is the fence wall from this side to this side. You notice that at the very corner, we have steel, which was erected when the blinding was being done. So there's a mat in the ground, the steel was erected, and then we have the block going around it. So if I go a little bit, you notice that there's a hollow space in it. I don't know if you notice it. Yes, there's a hollow space with it, which the concrete is going to be poured in. Now if I come here also, let me just come here so you can see it. So you notice that there's space in it. So you pour concrete in this space, which has these blocks interlocking at each point. So you have this side going in and other side going in. So then the concrete coming in is basically going to hold all this thing together. So if you want to detach the block from the column, it is going to be a bit difficult to achieve that. So what we've done in this case is that we left an interval of about 30 feet. Now this land is on a slope. If you look at it, you notice it. The very end is just about one course of block that has been laid over here. However, for this side, you have about 9 to 10 course over here. So then sometimes people get in touch, they want to do a fence wall, and then you notice that their land is on a slope. And when you end up giving them the estimate, then they tend to find it a bit expensive. It usually happens so because of the nature of the land. You have to spend or use more materials in this particular case. So from this particular column, which has the steel in it, that is here, all the way through to this one here is about 30 feet. And then so for about every 30 feet, we've introduced a steel column, even though we have every column between every 10 feet. So from that side, that is the corner here, to this side is 10 feet. We have columns introduced at every 10 feet. Then we have the hollow space in that we are going to be pouring concrete to be able to bind all the columns together. Also in our case, we decided to use the hollow blocks as a way of being able to minimize damp. And then also, so this is not full hollow, this is partial hollow. So if you look at the block over there, you notice it's partial hollow. And then also we use DPC. So if you look at the walls very well, we have DPC, which goes after the second course of block. So then in this case, we didn't use DPM in the trenches. However, we use DPM with the sections where we have the column. So when we dug the column, we put in DPM there, and then we fixed the mat, and then we erected the column steel. And we decided not to use DPM because if we were going to be using DPM, we would have had to use about 7 rows, and each row is costing not less than 1,300 cedis or more. So then that's a lot of money. So rather we use DPC, which is about 300 cedis or so, throughout, and then that is going to help us minimize damp, especially if we had to fill or backfill this particular point of the fence wall. So I'm sure you are noticing that it is possible to do something that is going to minimize damp. It's to be able to do something that is going to eliminate some materials, and then you are able to still achieve a perfect result. So in this case, we didn't have to put steel at every interval or every column, else we would have had to spend so much money on that. But rather, we did an interval of 30 feet from each column, and then we put in steel. Then the 2 columns that comes in between doesn't have any steel, but we are going to be pouring concrete in it. Now, one thing I also wanted to draw attention to, especially when your fence wall is being done, is the use of the float to be able to rub this mortar joint perfectly. So if you look at this wall, you notice it has been done for the inside and also for the outside. One thing I've noticed with some masons is that they sometimes just pay attention to that of the inside only. They rub the inside gently, and then they forget about the back part, which is really a bad practice. I want to take you to the back so you notice that the back has equally been rubbed as well. Now, what do you achieve when you rub it nicely? So when you rub it nicely, what that helps you achieve is to minimize cracks that are possible to come or to happen within the fence wall. So let me just scale this wall. Let me just show you this as I was saying. So you notice we have a hollow space. This is about 7 inches to, let's say, about maybe 1 foot or even more than 1 foot, and that is going to take concrete. So that is going to make this very firm. So aside that, if you look at the back part of the wall, you notice that it has all been rubbed nicely with a float. Yes, so that we don't have any form of crack happening at any point. So that is also an important note you need to have at the back of your mind wherever or whenever you intend to put up your fence wall, so that you don't end up spending so much money on your fence, then later you start having issues with it. So that is basically just about this video. This the remaining portions of land we have next to the car wash, which is I think about 2.6 acres or so. Initially we wanted to do create a recreational center over here, but we are having second thoughts about it. And one of the plans we intend to use this place for is to create a small community, an off-grid community if possible. Yes, I'm just letting you in on this little secret, so please don't tell anyone. Yeah, that is the whole plan for this. So we have quite a couple of work that will have to be done before we get to that phase. One of them will have to be registering the land. Aside registering the land, doing the registering maybe a company, registering a company purposely for this. Aside that, seeking legal advice, among other things. So all these things are things that are being done before we eventually will start announcing prices for what it will cost to own a plot within here, and to be able to start even putting up your building. So I'll share more of that with you. Hopefully, maybe once we have everything set and we have the green light to get started with this. And I believe this is going to be a very beautiful community. We've started with a demarcation already, and we have like about 16 plots available. So we are doing the sizes that are going to be available will be 50 by 80 feet and then 50 by 100 feet. That is more like a half plot, but a little bit bigger than the usual half plots. That is what we are going to be having. So I'll just show you a little bit on the screen. And then we also will have a street that will go across all the way from the main road through to every house within. We are going to be having a water treatment section, which is going to be filtering or treating water that is going to supply every or serve every household within this community. And the good thing, as you can see, we already have the fence wall in place, so as a form of security. So in case you have your plot within, you wouldn't have to worry about anything in terms of people coming landguards. No, you wouldn't have to worry about that. So these are some of the things we are trying to put in place, so that once we are through with everything, then eventually we'll announce to you all out there. But in case you're interested, of course you can reach out, and maybe, I don't know, we can just put your details down, so that whenever we are through, which is definitely going to be this year, whenever we are through with all the things that has to be done before we roll out, then we will announce to you, or we can inform you, so that you go ahead to probably make or start something. Yeah, I know a lot of people want to own a plot or in Ghana build something, the rest, but sometimes are scared of the scammers, among other things. And these are part of the reasons why I would want us to take our time to get everything right before we roll out with this project, so that we don't end up having challenges just as some people have had with, I don't want to mention any name, but some people have had, especially within the central region, because they didn't have to, or they didn't take time to plan whatever project they intend to do very well before the execution, making it a project that is not really serving its purpose. We don't want to achieve that. So this is a community. It's going to be a small community, yes, but the idea of the plan is to be able to replicate this, elsewhere, hopefully by, with the help of God. One thing also we would really advise or advocate to do here is to live off grid. So hoping every house is going to be able to have, solar panels or solar systems, so that they don't have to rely on the national grid. And then also having water here, which is going to be from the boreholes that we have already. So yeah, that is just a sneak peek into something we intend to do. So that's just about it for today's video. It's possible to have a fence wall done with the means of eliminating some materials, but in the course of eliminating those materials such as wood and steel, you have to also pay attention to some materials such as blocks, which you need more if you are using the blocks for your columns, and then also to cement to be able to give you very solid and good mixture. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.